Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another weekly astro forecast. I'm Lauren Wilde, your astrologer. This is for the week of the Monday, December the 8th through the 14th of December of 2025. So we're in our last couple of weeks of this 9-year, and this coming week is going to feel like almost the aftermath of the full moon in Gemini this week, square the nodes of destiny and fate, because of the last quarter moon that we're going to have on Thursday in Virgo. And we're going to talk about that in length because Thursday's a big day. Astrologically, there's a lot going on. It's not like last week where it was like, man, there's a couple of things going on, but really the main event is Thursday. There's a lot of things popping off this week, which is a little bit more normal for 2025 astrology anyways. So let's get into it, shall we? All right. So we have, sorry, I always write notes that I have to remember. So on Monday, December the 8th, we're like cooking pretty good. You know, we're not really in any kind of like dire straits. There's not really anything major that is happening mostly on Monday, except we will have the moon at about 16 degrees, 17 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's now moving, out of conjunction, out of orb with the nodes of fate. But there is the moon in Libra from Saturday and Sunday. So it's a lot about relationships. It's a lot about equality and companionship, partnership, equality, things like that. It just really magnetizes all things relation related. And that may take some kind of intense, not turn, but just an intensity, because on Monday, December the 8th, we have Mars square Saturn. We're feeling it by Saturday, and there's just like some frustration coming up to the surface. Your desires may turn into needs, and they may need to come out of you. Like your desire may feel really, really strong at this time. You may find it hard to express how you feel or what you need to say about what kind of issue or desire or situation that you're in. But that is very much so. Mars is ruled by Aries. Yeah, actually Mars rules Aries, but they are, they govern the same kind of energy, who is god of war. And Saturn is, now freshly direct in Pisces. Well, one of the big things that's going to be happening on Wednesday, the day that we get that last quarter moon, that's super, super important, is the same day that Neptune's going to station direct at 29 degrees of Pisces. So what I want to say to kind of just like overshadow the week, we have a week that is ripe for miscommunication, frustration. Mercury will be moving back into Sagittarius. So it is not necessarily like a time where we are back in the free. We're not in the clear. We're not out of Mercury's shadow period until December the 12th, which is Friday this week. So we're still practicing. And Venus is still moving through that first decan of Sagittarius. So we've got a lot of things, again, like I said, that are relationship, and they're very fiery because Mars is bringing, that intensity of Sagittarius in the late degrees of Sag. We've got Venus, which rules relationships in Sag. We've got the sun in Sag. We've got a lot of Sagittarius energy going on right now. And Sag is not known for staying quiet. There's a reason it's called Sag mouth. Well, by Friday, really, even by the midpoint of this week, Mercury is going to be back in what? Sagittarius. Sagittarius has a whole kind of mindset that is like, what? It's not mean if it's the truth, like I'm just telling you the truth. Well, Sagittarius looks at everything kind of like a joke in a lot of ways, or some sort of lesson to be learned. Not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody feels like that. Not everybody can laugh about everything like a Sagittarius, you know? They just have the ability to gloss over things in a way that none of the other signs can. Sagittarius rules humor and comedians. So, as well as Gemini and Mercury. So they're the two comedians of the zodiac, but not that there can't be other signs for comedians. They're very strong indicators of people that are able to take situations and turn them into funny stories. Sagittarius. I digress from that for right now, though. But when it comes to Mars and Saturn and Mercury moving through the late degrees of Scorpio, words can have a punch. They can also have a sting to them. And we're trying to practice the things that we learned just a few weeks ago, you know, like a week and a half ago, when Mercury was in the late degrees of Scorpio. And there's a lot of things around mental health, psychology, fears, emotions, secrets, taboos, all kinds of stuff. That's also when Mercury was in those late degrees of Scorpio, was when the Epstein files got leaked. So there's stuff coming up from the surface, and Saturn is saying, take responsibility, you know, take action, make a plan, and take responsibility and get to it. Like Saturn is like, I'm so sick and tired of you hearing about your dream. Like, be about it, bro. You know, because Neptune is literally in his last couple of days of being in Pisces for the next 165 years. So, you know, like Pisces is this kind of energy that's kind of lackadaisical. It's like, it'll get done, you know, when it feels right, it will be done. And that's part of why, you know, Chiron and Neptune created the Gen Zs, because they have this kind of mindset that it's just like, it's just going to happen, and can lack, you know, the follow through that Sagittarius, but Saturn would require, which is a dream without a wish, or dream without a plan is just a wish. So Saturn is very much like, get to it. And Mars is like, yesterday, not today, right? Like, do the thing, take the action, follow through, be brave. You know, Mars and Aries rule Nike. They're ruled by the goddess Nike, who literally says, just do it. So there's a lot of that kind of initiator energy that's coming. And that's great because, you know, we have Neptune in the last degree of Pisces, and Neptune's going to re-enter Aries, 0 degrees of Aries, on January 13th of 2026. So all of that, like reconceptualizing your identity, all of that stuff is coming back to the surface, baby. It's coming back big. So the things that maybe got kind of put on pause in around May, they're all coming back around, because that is when Saturn stationed retrograde, Neptune not too long afterwards. And now Saturn is officially in Aries, and Neptune will be officially in Aries as of January the 13th. And then February the 13th or 14th will be Saturn. Well, Neptune's going to get back through the degrees that he went through this past year, where we're trying to rethink and reconceptualize and dream up a new identity that is more aligned with what? Our dreams. And it works really well with the stabilizing force of Saturn. However, Saturn is just going to breeze right by Neptune, because Saturn's going to get all the way up to 14 degrees of Aries before he retrogrades this summer. And he will not come back into a conjunction with Neptune, only by just a couple of orb degree, but not an exact conjunction this year. So we're really getting to this place around, oh, my partner's home. We're really getting to a place where it's time to face the music. And it's a quick period of time, about 3 months, where Neptune and Saturn are really like working well together to take this dream and then put it to action with a plan. And I know I've been talking about that since Saturn moved into Pisces in March of 2023, but it really is like a solidification of that energy, which was, I had a dream, and did I make it happen? It correlated right alongside the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra eclipses. So it's a lot about myself, initiation, my identity, all of those things is what really kicked all of that off. And it's just this closure point. And then they're all going to be in the fiery sign of early Aries for the next 2.5 years. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Chinese New Year, when we have our new year, it's going to be the fire horse. So we will officially have Uranus in Gemini for the next 8 years as of 2026. It will officially station there, and that's where it will be. Then we will have Neptune and Aries in the fire sign. In the fire sign of Aries, that is like, take action now, get out of your own way. The obstacle is you, figure it out. It's very self-focused, right? And then we will even have a taste of Chiron getting into Taurus, which I am very eager to see how Chiron and Taurus is really going to bring the world of somatics all the way up front. I mean, just everything about body and nervous system and just the aspects of how important somatics are with Chiron, the healer. So it's going to be a huge increase in naturopathy, chiropractic care, somatic intelligence, emotional intelligence, body-based therapy. It's coming. And we're really going to see that for 8 years, right alongside Uranus in Gemini for the next 8 years. At the same time, we've got Uranus moving into Gemini and staying in Gemini for the next 8 years. He's not going to go back into late Taurus. So when we look at all these late placements, these late transits, we are zipping shit up in the very end of the Gregorian calendar year, which means the year ends in December. But we're also seeing the astrological Farmer's Almanac, which is the wheel of the year, by the way. And that is the beginning of the year is more so in March and February. So in Chinese New Year, their New Year is in February. And the Gregorian calendar, the year really restarted on Samhain. So we're like moving back towards light, but because they utilize the Western tropical zodiac in the wheel of the year, the beginning of the real year is spring equinox when everything kicks off. In the more spiritual sense, the beginning of the year is Yule, but it was winter and it was meant to be a time of rest because the ancient pagans understood that it was darkness before light. So that's a whole nother rant for another day. But my point of saying all this is like shit is hitting its closure. We are supposed to be finding our new teachers, our new mindsets, our new visions, our new identities that we want to step into. It is a huge closure year because we're closing out a 9-year in 3 weeks. Please keep all that in mind. Okay. Now, at the same time, we've still got the North and the South node in the Pisces Virgo axis. What does that mean? It's about the ability to dream and the spiritual world and the metaphysical world, the unseen realms, and Virgo, which is, the engineer who wants all the data and needs to see the material science and needs to see the material proof. And those are in their epicenter of their intensity right now. Between 15 to 10 degrees is when they're at the peak of what their expression is. So pay attention to that. Okay. Now we will see Mars move through the last late decan of Sagittarius. So that's important to pay attention to. And we will also have Venus crossing into that second decan of Sagittarius later this week. All right, now let me get to a couple of other things. So on Tuesday, it's a pretty chill day. But that's because we're ramping up for Wednesday. So let me talk about Wednesday for a second. So on Wednesday, around 2:20 in the morning, meaning, Libra is carrying most of a little bit of Saturday, most of Sunday, most of through Tuesday. Okay. And the moon enters Virgo very early. And earlier that morning, around 7:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Neptune is going to station direct at 29 degrees of Pisces. So anytime anything is at 29 degrees, it's what's called the karmic or the anaretic degree. It means all the shit that entire transit was, no matter how long it was, for this was 16 years, is coming to the surface. A whole new era is beginning in Pisces. Who's going to get hit by this? Pisces natives, people with a Pisces rising, a sun, and a moon, really going to get hit with it. I'm really personally seeing it a lot in my oldest son, who's Pisces rising, and he has Uranus at 2 degrees of Aries in his first house. He has a late Pisces cusp on the ascendant. And I just feel like I'm finally getting to see his personality for the first time. And he is on the autism spectrum, but I just really feel his personality starting to break through. I feel like he was very, enmeshed in everybody else's, like, the family identity. And I really sense that he is like becoming his own person. He's got humor now that, he laughs about. He's got a lot of strong opinions. Like, he's 14 going on 15 now. And I'm really starting to see that. So I'm very excited to see how we're going to see Saturn move through Aries and help him grow, help him get a sense of impact, especially as he's coming into his Saturn opposition. Happens at 14 years old for everybody. And that really starts to help them understand the difference between themselves and others. But beyond that, let's go ahead. So when Neptune stations direct, it is going to also align with a fixed star called Shet. And Shet is the shin of the constellation Pegasus. So for those of you guys that have been in Astrology 201 and you know the story about Pegasus that came from the blood of Medusa when her head was severed and how it was a part of like the restoration of her story. Well, there is a part that of Pegasus's constellation that is quite malefic in historic traditional astrology. And because of Neptune, which rules water, especially large bodies of water like oceans, rain, flooding, and Shet is very closely tied to water accidents, there could be a possibility this week of some sort of flooding, some sort of major like tsunami or water-based event. And then also it could be some sort of shipwreck. Shet is tied to ships, particularly, so vehicles that are in the water, on the water, but it also rules airplane accidents. And nobody likes that during the holidays, but it is just something to keep in mind. It's way, way, way more so about ships than it is about the air. But I just wanted to let you guys know that. And it's a very occultic kind of star. The Shet, it is like psychic matters on the non-material realm. It is very inventive, occult, if you will, like some sort of new awareness could happen at this time. But that same day, we have Mercury opposite Uranus. So Mercury is going to be opposite Uranus at 28 degrees. But here's what's also interesting. We've also got Black Moon Lilith at 28 degrees of Scorpio. So Mercury will come into an exact conjunction with Black Moon Lilith at 28 degrees at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday and immediately oppose Uranus in 28 degrees of Taurus. There's some sort of like awareness, some sort of shadow, some sort of something that's being brought to our awareness at this time. It could definitely be about secrets or the occult, or, it's also can be tied to affairs or divorces, but it's intense. Okay. That one's intense. Now, the next day, we get into Thursday, and that is when Mercury will trine Neptune, because Mercury will be at 29 degrees of Scorpio. Neptune's going to be freshly direct at 29 degrees of Pisces. And Mercury is going to bring some sort of communication from Neptune into distillation, some sort of thing that's been hard to say or hard to plan, that's been foggy or unclear, and he's going to make it clear. Okay. Or he's going to try to make it clear. And then we've also got that last quarter moon. It'll be at 4 p.m. just about on Thursday, the 11th at 20 degrees of Virgo. And this is a complicated moon. Okay. It is a complicated moon because it is in an active square with Mars in Sagittarius. And it is also very much so going to make us feel like we really got to get things done. Like there's a timeline that's like cooking somehow, and we're going to feel like we're behind if we don't take clear action. Well, we know the moon's going to be at 20 degrees. Well, the sun is going to be at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. So we will have a square between the moon and the sun. So the way that our emotions are, our identities, there's this sense of like releasing something. For me, it's up in my 9th house, and that's like my work. And this is where I'm like very publicly storytelling about releasing parts of my work and my reputation as what I've been known professionally as a witch, as I move more so into an entrepreneurial, like oracular strategist. And like, I know destiny wise, I'm supposed to do this because the South Node's on my Mars. And like, I know without a doubt, I'm timing wise meant to be doing this right now. So I'm going to follow. All right. So, last thing on Thursday, Mercury crosses back into Sagittarius at like 5:30 p.m. On Thursday night. So just keep that in mind as he moves into a new sign, Sagittarius, that you may just find you need to talk. You need to say what you need to say. There could be some lawyer kind of things or legal conversations because Sagittarius rules the law. Hold on one second. Thank you. My little heater is small but mighty in this room. So just keep in mind, Sag mouth. You may say things that you don't mean, especially with Mercury in those last couple degrees, before he is fully direct and, gets back up to 6 degrees. So on Friday, we will have the moon. Oh my gosh, I meant to say the moon is in Leo all weekend. Please forgive me. I have been having real conversations with James, my partner, about how I think not Neptune, oh my gosh, but anesthesia going under twice in 1 month is really hit my dyslexia. Like I feel like I'm like almost getting regressed back in dyslexia. I'm having a really hard time with saying the right word. And that's really weird for me because I usually have a lot of precision in my speaking language, maybe not reading or writing, but speaking, I've usually been way more clear. I like the way I did my tests in high school were verbal instead of written. But side note on that, bear with me. On Sunday, the moon is in Leo. Then it gets into Virgo, where we have our last quarter moon. And on Friday, the moon enters Libra. So yes, this weekend is still all about relationships with Leo and where do we fit? And so just keep that in mind. I'm sorry about that. On Saturday is going to be like a weird day, and I'm not particularly liking it because we've got a Uranus and a Pluto aspect that day, but Sunday is not easy either. So let's just talk about the weekend coming up. So on Saturday, December the 13th, Mars is going to quincunx Uranus. So Mars will be at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, 150 degrees away from Uranus at 28 degrees of Taurus. Sag and Taurus are just about as like opposite as you can imagine. Sagittarius doesn't need an answer, doesn't need beyond a map and a compass and a heading, and Taurus doesn't want to leave the house. So like they're very different. They are 5 houses apart, and they are a quincunx, which is between a rock and a hard place, or a failure to integrate or collaborate or find compromise. Like they just have a hard time working together. So that's happening, and it can create some sense of impatience because of Mars and Uranus are both speedy planets. They want change. But the other thing is that Mars is the blade, it pierces things, and Uranus is the severer. So, like, there's some sort of decision making that requires action that is coming that day. And then, later that day around 11:30 in the morning, Mercury is going to sextile Pluto. And why that matters is because it's going to make us look really deep and think really deep about what's going on in our lives. Like the weekend is set for change. And then Sunday, Mars is then going to square Neptune. And Mars and Neptune squares are historically not the best energy, like just in general. I always tell people, like, be very careful around things like substances, anything that could cause somebody to not realize like how much substance they're using. It is very closely tied to ODs. But it also causes confusion, deception, discouragement. It's just a really not great feeling aspect. And we will feel that by Thursday, and it closes out on the 16th. So I just tell people caution and moderation are what's necessary to avoid some sort of disappointment or being, taken advantage of. So just be wary of things that, may seem like they're too good to be true. Test the theory, use your awareness and how long, have you seen something, or, just use as much as you can of the blend between your intuition and your logic mind. In DBT, we call that wise mind. Okay. So those are the aspects for this week. Your tarot prompt is going to be in the comments. So make sure you check that out. And I've just decided that we're going to work with one tarot question, and it's always going to be around what I perceive as to be the most important aspect of the week. That's going to highlight the biggest kind of change or awareness. So I hope this helps, and I will see you guys in class on Monday morning. Make sure that if you want your tarot card read, that you submit your tarot card and any kind of questions that you have. If you also want to ask any questions because you won't be able to be there and be present, same form. All right. So you'll see your tarot card and the Google link to submit your question. I read them in order. And I prioritize those before anybody else that just shows up live in class. So do me a favor and do yourself a favor and go ahead and submit those things. Otherwise, if we run out of time, we run out of time. Okay. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday morning. Bye.